So thank you, Ginger, for doing the gifts tonight. I wanted to talk about gifts, but in a slightly different way. So gifts are meant to make the heart glad, right? And they can both benefit the recipient and the giver. When I think of gift giving, one of my favorite verses is Proverbs 11:25 that says, Proverbs 11:25, it's a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And I just love that. First, I love the word refreshed anyway. It's such a wonderful thing. And so I thought about this idea of generosity. I think it's one of those curious things that the more you give, the more you get back. It's so different than the world's economy. When you give away 2 of 4 things, what do you have left? 2. In God's economy, when you give away 2 things, often you get back 2 plus more. So I wanted you to think about, this idea of Proverbs 11:25, that generosity refreshes the giver. Can you relate to this? Can you think of a time where you were generous and your generosity brought you great joy? I think probably all of us can think of something where we did something for someone. You were talking, Kay, about getting a blessing. That's generosity, right? It's refreshment. So there is truth in Paul's exhortation to us in Acts 20:35 that says it is more blessed to give than to receive. So on the flip side, have you ever been the recipient of someone's generosity? Have you ever received something that was so generous? It could be anything. Generosity comes in many forms. It can be materials, it can be time, it can be emotions. People can be generous with compassion. In recent months, my family has experienced some unexpected generosity in a couple of different ways that have got me thinking, just from total strangers, okay? And I'll give you 2 examples, and some are things you've heard of people doing. So I think it was probably maybe in October. It's been a few months ago. We were at the Slim Chickens drive-thru after church. And we pulled up and they said, oh, the people in front of you paid for your meal. So I'm like, well, all right. I said, Bert, let's pay for them behind us. He's like, well, how big is their car? How many people are in it? We're like, is it going to be more expensive than ours? And he goes, here, pay for their meal. And it was crazy because it was almost to the penny the same cost as what ours was. So we panned out evenly. But we felt really good about that. We're like, these people don't know us, and they paid for our meal. That whole pay it forward thing. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then at Christmas, I was in the grocery store, and this older man came up to me and started talking to me, and he just wanted to know if I had a child at home still. And he pulls out of his pocket a stack of envelopes like this, and he says, this is for your daughter. And he was giving kids $5. And he told me, I asked him a little bit about himself, and he said that he was a retired policeman and that his greatest joys over his lifetime have been putting criminals behind bars and putting smiles on children's faces. And he could not do the former, so he still could do the latter. And I just thought, what a neat thing, that someone has this idea of how they want to be generous. So those 2 acts have kind of prompted me to think about how I can be more generous to people that I don't know. It's easy to be generous to people we do know or even acquaintances, but what about just people out there? Because I've thought about this, generosity is an amazing way to bring out the Lord's love to those who may not know him yet. To practice this kind of generosity, we want to consider the things that we're most passionate about. Do you have a heart for the homeless, for foster children, for people in nursing homes and on hospice, for the divorced or widowed, for children with autism, for victims of hate crime, people living in poor areas or poor conditions? What speaks to your heart? That list could go on and on. We all have things that touch our hearts, things you see on television, things you hear about, people you know. So if something speaks to your heart, I want you to consider how you can use that as motivation to begin a personal ministry of generosity. It doesn't have to be carried out on a grand scale. It just has to be sincere. We all want sincerity, right? My daughter, when I brought home that little envelope, I didn't even know what was in it. I said, I'll just wait till we get home. And told her the story, and she opened it, and it was the $5. And She was so touched by the gift. It's kind of funny. My daughter is 18, but she was like, this is amazing. She said, I'm going to keep this $5 bill to remember generosity by instead of spending it. But I thought about the little kids, because that $5 for like a 3-year-old, they could go get a cool piece of candy, a little toy, and I think what joy that brings them. And this is because this person had this idea of, doing this. So when people receive kindness from a stranger, they often want to know, what compels that kindness, and that's how we can show the love of the Lord. As Christians, we know kindness is a fruit of the Holy Spirit who dwells in us as a result of our faith in Christ. And so with all the hypocrisy in the church that we can think of, Church Universal, in this world, this sort of kindness I think is needed more than ever to shine the light of Christ. So one example of a personal ministry in the Bible, because I always want to go back to what does the Bible say, not what do I say, but Acts 9, where there was a woman named Dorcas. Do y'all remember her? Yeah. She used her gift of sewing to minister, I think, mainly to widows in the church. And so there's a scene in Acts 9 where Dorcas has died, and all of these ladies, there's only like a sentence on this, but I can just envision this crowded room and all these ladies, and they're crying, and they're going up to Peter, and they're saying, look at the robe that she made me. Look at the beautiful clothes she made me. And her story is so inspiring. Y'all may find there are lots of organizations that are called Dorcas societies all over the world, where groups get together and do some kind of service project. And even Mary and Martha, which is what our classes have been named after, they had a ministry. If you think about it, when they opened their home for Jesus and his disciples, what did Martha do? Martha cleaned and cooked and got everything ready. Mary sat and spent time listening to Jesus, probably visiting with the other people too. Both things are important to have. So we are at the beginning of a new year, kind of still. I know it's almost March, but if you're thinking about something you want to accomplish for 2025, consider embarking on your own personal generosity ministry. If you're worried about finances, remember, generosity doesn't have to take the form of money or material things, but Jesus was generous when he spent time with people. So often just setting aside time to spend with someone. Maybe you know a person who needs help, you have a neighbor who's lonely, whatever you know, just spending time with a person can be a ministry in itself. The old adage that love is spelled T-I-M-E is so true. I love that. So over these last weeks, we have learned several simple recipes for things that we can share with others, just like Ginger shared with you. We all love a cup of good soup, bread, and good dessert. And we also love homemade gifts that come from the heart. So maybe one of these items fits into your own personal ministry. How will you refresh others, as Proverbs 11:25 encourages us? If you don't have an idea yet, I have a couple of steps that might help you think through it. First, always pray for wisdom. Pray for what God might place on your heart. Consider your talents and discover what those can be used, or where those can be used with what you are passionate about. So, for instance, I will tell you in my own life, I find myself drawn to people in nursing homes and on hospice. I have a lot of experience in that in recent years, and even when I was a small child. I was always going to the nursing home with my grandmother to see my great-grandmother. And I find it's easier for me to sit and talk with people and just to encourage them. We used to take our daughter, she used to sing at nursing homes when she was little. Bert would play guitar, she would sing hymns. And those ladies would just love her. Can she come up to our room with us? And we'd go find her, and she's watching The Price is Right, laid up on the sofa. The sound is blaring, and they're having a great time. But she touched their hearts, and in turn, they touched ours too. We just found something that we could go and brighten someone's day. So think about, what groups, that's actually the person, group, or association which you are passionate about, but what are you good at? Some of you mentioned you're good at scrapbooking, or you're good at sewing, you're good at cooking, maybe you like to make cards. Whatever you're good at, how can you use that to reach the group that you're passionate about? So you find those two things where they meet. Set a goal and make sure it's something doable. Doesn't have to be grand scale. Determine how often you want to do this. So maybe it's once a week, once a month, twice a year, once a year, whatever works for you. Try it out and then keep praying over it. So again, I wanted to thank you all for coming. All these several weeks, many of you have been like every week, and I think that's so neat. Thank you, Ginger, for all the time you spent in this, and thank you to Julie for organizing so well. And so I just wanted to end with a benediction for you. Blessings to you as you find ways to share what you've learned with others in this class. May God bless you and others as you share the gift of generosity.